Greetings to everyone, and especially after a beautiful evening of Kriya last night. And Sagar asked me to talk about overcoming short-term and long-term karma. And I'm going to tell a story. I shared this last weekend, so a couple of you may have heard it very recently, but some years ago, I was at an Ananda work day doing some outdoor, very physical work. And I stepped on something really sharp. I thought it was a nail. It poked all the way through my shoe, made a big hole in the bottom of my foot. I had to go to the doctor, get treatment for it. And about a week or two later, I could still feel something inside there. I thought it was maybe a piece of nail had broken off in there. And so I went to the doctor, he x-rayed it, nothing showed up. A month later, there was still something in there, I could swear. And so the doctor cut it open, looked, still couldn't find anything. And so that was it, there was nothing more I could do. But there was always this sharp pain down there. And sometimes it would go away, sometimes it would come to the surface. Sometimes I'd be out running, which I did a lot of running in those days, and my foot would hit the ground, and all of a sudden there'd be this really sharp pain. And I swear there was something inside there. But no one could find it, so there was nothing I could do. I just had to accept it. And I would be away for months with no pain, and then all of a sudden it would come back. And this went on for about 11 years. And then after about 11 years, it started getting much more painful. And I went to the doctor again. It started showing on the surface of the foot as sort of a wart or a callus. And the doctor thought it was a virus. And so the solution was to freeze it with liquid nitrogen to try to draw it out. And he did that several times, which is very interesting. Just it kills the skin on the surface. We have a doctor here who's familiar with it. And it wasn't really solving it, and it was just getting more painful. And then finally one day I was soaking it in the tub. I was lying there, and I was just pushing at it and trying to see if I could squeeze it and see if something would come out. And lo and behold, all of a sudden this really shiny object started poking its way out. And I pulled it all the way out, and it was a shard of glass. And I measured it, it was 1/4 inch long. And it was just a really, really fine sliver of glass that had been floating around in my foot for 11 years. And because I walked on it, it would move around, and sometimes it would poke a certain way. And it was as strange as if an alien had come out of my foot. It was just that surreal to see this huge piece of glass come out. And it taught me a lesson about karma, which is that it has a beginning, it has an end. And it's finite. Karma is not ever infinite. And Swami Kriyanandaji talked about this very often. And he talked about it in the context of certain religions preach eternal damnation for the sinners. And what has a finite cause cannot have an infinite effect, is what he taught. And so I learned one really important lesson. Karma always has a beginning, always has an end. Now 11 years might seem like a long time, but I hate to disappoint you, but this is really short-term karma, 11 years of something like that. And in fact, everything is relatively short-term karma because it's fixed by time. It has a beginning and an end. It's not going to be infinite. So all karma, in a way, you could say is short-term. There's shorter or longer term. But there was something else that was interesting I learned about this, which is that when we create karma, there's pain. Because the most pain was when it happened, when I stepped on that thing and I caused this thing to happen, and at the very end, when it was coming out. And what I learned, and I've seen this with other karmas, the most pain is when we make the action or the decision that creates the karma. And for a refined spiritual soul, it can be very painful when you make a mistake. And then that karma sits just unseen under the surface for years, for lifetimes. And then when it starts to come back to the surface, like this piece of glass did, when the karma is on its way out, it also starts to show the most pain again. And so we have, unfortunately, the bad news is that all these hidden karmas underneath, they're just kind of waiting there for the right environment, the right circumstances, the right timing. But applying this idea to another karma that I guess you could say it's more speculation on my part, but I believe it to be true, which is that I've always had a very extreme sensitivity and aversion to seeing religious or spiritual persecution of others. When I see it in a movie, it just affects me much more deeply than it should for something that, is not that uncommon. And I'm talking more about the persecution by people's own religion, not by one religion against another. I'm talking about in the Catholic Church and other religions, they persecute each other basically. And I finally was starting to meditate on this, and why do I feel this so strongly? And it dawned on me that in a recent lifetime I've been on the receiving end of extreme persecution like that. And for some people, you might be satisfied in realizing that, and I wasn't satisfied because, of course, the question came up in my mind, why was I on the receiving end of such extreme persecution? And as I meditated on it, I just had an insight that I believe to be true. And you can take it with a grain of salt because I can't absolutely confirm it. But it dawned on me that in some other distant life, I had been the one causing persecution of others, of my co-religionists. And so the karma was I had to experience it. And as I was trying to tune in and understand this on a deeper level, because Master and our great ones teach that karma is not retribution or punishment. It's not like we make a mistake and there's some judge up there that says, okay, I'm going to hit you just as hard as you hit that person just to punish you. It doesn't work that way. Karma is to teach us lessons, to help us grow spiritually, to grow in understanding. And as I was meditating on this, I thought, for a refined soul who's practicing spirituality and religion, what must be the pain of causing persecution in a lifetime and then waking up from this dream on the astral plane where you're in the light and you can see truth more clearly? How painful the pain of that actually, of having been the one causing the persecution, I think must be much greater than to wake up from a lifetime of having been on the receiving end and waking up from the dream and thinking, oh good, I worked that out finally. But again, it's not about punishment, because I believe the soul who makes a mistake is on the astral plane after, say, a lifetime of persecuting others, and that soul wakes up and just feels the anguish of that, and it says, I don't ever want to do this again, because delusion can cloud everything and make us do really, really stupid things, as we've all seen. And I think the soul, my soul, I think, probably said, I don't want to ever do this again. So let me experience a lifetime where I'm on the receiving end, so I know what it feels like. And I know after that experience, I'll never be tempted by delusion or whatever to ever cause that kind of pain to another person. And I believe this is more how karma works than punishment and retribution. It helps us learn lessons. And for me, I believe it's colored the way I work with people, with teaching meditation, devotion, and just in a maybe much more kind-hearted way, to a fault, maybe to an extreme. And for me, it was actually going through that, perhaps for my soul, was a really good lesson in helping me grow in great ways. Now, one of the ways to learn the lesson in the right way, and this is a big trick about karma when the lesson comes to us, is that Yoganandaji said in various ways. He said one time, what comes of itself, let it come. Another time he said, be even-minded and cheerful under all circumstances. And he also said that when karma comes, he said, don't be emotionally reactive. And it's kind of daunting, the reason why. Because he said, and he taught that when a karma comes to us and we react emotionally, we're either creating new karma by new desires. For example, if a karma comes to us of experiencing pain or suffering, and we say, no, go away, I don't want this. I don't want this to happen. I want to only experience, non-pain and pleasure. That's a desire that is creating a lot of new karma. And it's not finishing off the karma. If when I was persecuted, I got angry and started persecuting others, it just would have continued the karma, on and on and on. And we do this a lot with a lot of our karmas. So one of the keys to working out karma more quickly is to be non-emotionally reactive when karma comes to us, even good karma. And I saw this with Swami Kriyanandaji. Even when there was a success at Ananda, something good happened, he wouldn't get all emotionally excited about it and, oh, this is so great and this and that, because he knew that duality would come and take its payment, and that at some point, because he got emotionally high about it, he would experience the emotional low of it. He told a story about this one time. He always wanted to have a big motor home, they're called in America, because Yoganandaji actually created one of the very first motorhomes to go on his tours of America. And so Swamiji wanted a motorhome to go on some tours that he was taking Ananda people out on. And he finally got it. He was just so pleased with this motorhome, just being with people in it, traveling around. But he said he knew that this was an emotional pleasure that he was having about it. Even it was a good thing, but he was getting emotional. But he said he knew that he was going to pay the price for this emotional happiness. And so one day he was with some people in the motorhome, and someone had parked it. They were doing some shopping, and they had not put on the parking brake. And it started moving really, really slowly. And no one could even tell it was moving. It was moving so slow. And then suddenly it hit a wall, a cement wall. And just by then they realized it was moving, but it stopped so suddenly that Swamiji was up in a cupboard getting something. And he went flying through the air and landed on the floor, and he broke a finger as a result of it. And as soon as he broke the finger, he just started laughing and laughing, because I paid the karma for that emotional thought that I had. And so here was someone who accepted, even-minded and cheerful, what came to him. And so he worked out that karma. If he had gotten upset at the person who didn't put on the brake, whatever, more karma would have been created. And so working on overcoming emotional reactivity to things that happen to us is really, really, really important. Now, this doesn't mean just being passive, because one of the best ways to work out karma more quickly is a very strong willpower and positive energy. Swami Kriyanandaji demonstrated this so many times in his life, which was that the more energy you put out, the greater your magnetism, and the karma becomes smaller in a way. Its effect becomes smaller. It can be the same karma, but the effect will be less when it hits us. And also to face our tests and karmas with a really positive, proactive energy. If a couple of gundas come down the street and start threatening me with violence, if I say, "Oh, don't hurt me, please don't hurt me," and I shrink like this, well, you can bet that they'll hurt me a lot more if I do that than if I stand up and stand up for myself and put out a very strong, positive energy and aura. I had this experience last year. I was in the hospital with dengue fever, and while I was there, they discovered a tumor in my neck, and they did a biopsy with a needle. It was cancerous. And so then they had to do a surgery to find out whether it was a malignant or benign cancer. And so immediately after coming out of the hospital with dengue, I went right back in. They did the surgery. And then they had to do these tests to find out whether it was a spreading type or whether it was all contained. And it took 3 weeks to do the tests. And it was a very interesting time, because the type of cancer that it was not a very good one to have. And so I had 3 weeks. And it turns out that during the first 2.5 weeks, all the tests came back showing that it was malignant. It was only the very final test that they sent to a great hospital here in Mumbai, the best testing lab in the country, that they found out that it was benign and it was okay. But during those 3 weeks, I thought, okay, it was very interesting. It's a good test for everybody to go through, because you just learn a lot about karma, you learn about yourself. And I remembered this concept. I thought, okay, I could be really fearful. Oh my God, what happens? What if this bad thing could happen? And I've seen, my wife had cancer, and I've seen what it does and how challenging it is. Or I thought I could put out really positive, proactive energy. And that's what I did. In this case, it was only mental energy and positive attitude, and just say, okay, what comes of itself, let it come. Bring it on, Lord, bring it on, this karma. And I just sort of, metaphorically, I looked at this cancer and said, okay, I'm ready for you. I'm going to go after you if you come and try to take me. And I don't think literally that way, but I just had this attitude about it. And what that does is that having a strong, positive, proactive attitude, well, for one thing, and again, I've seen this in other ways, when karma comes, when you see a negative karma comes, rather than turning away from it and trying to fend off its blows and becoming smaller, I swear sometimes it's better to run right at it. It's running towards you, and you just charge right at it, and you'll find that there may be a big collision happen, but you may get the better of the collision if you put out the right kind of energy against your karma. And so this is what I did, and it turned out that this karma was smaller than it could have been. And it partly works on the level of magnetism. And so much of what Yoganandaji taught about mitigating and reducing and overcoming karma has to do with increasing our own magnetism. And the way he put it is that when our magnetism is strong, versus when our magnetism is weak, the same karma can kill us if our magnetism is weak, the very same karma, or if our magnetism is really strong, it will bounce off us, or maybe it will knock us over and cause some minor injury. So the greatest thing that we can do is work on our own magnetism. And you'll find that there's many ways that Yoganandaji talked about it in Autobiography of a Yogi. The way he put it, by a number of means, by prayer, by willpower, by yoga meditation, by consultation with saints, by use of astrological bangles, the adverse effects of past wrongs can be minimized or nullified. And he's all just talking about ways that increase our magnetism. Consultation with saints is guru attunement. Wearing astrological bangles. He also said that there are certain plants that you can wear next to your skin that increase your magnetism, gemstones, meditation, prayer, devotion. All these are ways that increase our magnetism. And when our magnetism is increased, then the karma has much less effect on us. I had this interesting experience where a few years ago, and it touches on the idea of working on increasing magnetism is really the best thing that we can do of all. Many years ago, I was climbing a mountain, and while I was climbing, I was coming down a very steep, icy slope. Some of you have heard the story. I'll just be very brief about this version of it. But as I was coming down this very steep, icy slope, this rock got dislodged way high up and came flying down the mountain. It just whooshed, literally whooshed right by my ear and smashed my leg and sent me flying down this really steep slope and smashed my leg, severed an artery, and I crawled for about an hour to find help because my leg was not usable. And to make a long story short, I got airlifted by a helicopter to a hospital. And one thing about it notable is my astrological bangle was black when I got to the hospital. And I think that took on a lot of the hit of that karma. Chanting to God and Guru, I think, reduced that karma. But then Swami Kriyanandaji said something very interesting, because I told him about this story, of course. And in his first early edition of Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, he said, and if you have the karma to die under a precipice because a rock falls on you and hits you, he said, better to stay away from precipices for a while. And the one reason he said is that, not out of fear, but if your karma is to die because of that, if you avoid that situation and in the meantime work on your own magnetism, your spiritual magnetism, guru attunement, that when that karma comes, which it inevitably will, it will have much less of an effect. It may just cause a minor issue. The way he put it also, I think in later editions, was, he said, if you have the karma to drown as a sailor, he said, if you live in the middle of the land and never even see the ocean in your lifetime, he said that karma will never show up in that lifetime, but it's still there. And this is the scary thing. How many karmas do we have in our astral spine? It's just, I think if we could see them all, we just would say, okay, I give up. There's so much. I think that's why Master and God hides it from us. But again, the answer is work on our magnetism, because when we work on our magnetism, guru attunement, meditation, devotion, all these things, then the karma, as Master said, it's mitigated or even nullified, which to me is just the grandest thing I've ever heard in my life, that we can eliminate, mitigate, nullify our karma through things that we are doing. And it's not always about analyzing the karma. And I think people get too analytical about karma. They need to know why this is happening, and sometimes it's helpful. But the case with my foot, I mean, I didn't need to know what the karma that created that was, I mean, why that happened. I just needed to have the right attitude, work through it, know that it was going to come out. And I think people get too mental about these things. Trust that sometimes, yeah, the lesson that we need to learn, it's helpful to understand, especially if it's people karma, and people doing things to us. Just, it can be helpful to understand why something is happening. But even there, one of the great lessons I've learned from what I call people karma, just human interactions, is that for one thing, we go through life and things happen to us. People do things to us. They treat us unfairly. They misinterpret. They persecute us. It's inevitable. I don't think there's any avoiding it in this world. One thing that's very important is something that I believe Sister Gyanamata said. She said it's death for the devotee to think he's being treated unfairly. And what she was saying is that if you're blaming everything on other people, then you're not working on yourself. And that's death for the devotee, because you're not going to change with that. And so what I've learned over the years, and it's just paid off really well for me, is that when out of the blue, unasked for, someone does something to me that is patently unfair and not right. And yeah, things are unfair sometimes. It's just, factually. But if we emotionally get into, oh, that's so unfair, why did they do that to me, and this and that, it just creates more and more karma. And what I have found is that when such a situation happens, I accept that, okay, I'm the original cause of this. There may be an instrument that's working with me to do something to me that, yeah, on the surface, it's not right, it's unfair, but I am responsible on some level for what's happening. And sometimes you need to stand up against something like that if it's an evil or something like that, but often it's just your boss saying something to you, doing something to you, coworker or something. And I found the best way to receive it is to say, okay, for some reason I caused this to happen, but I found the best way out of this is even to ignore that and just to say, okay, if I'm ever in this situation again where the roles are reversed, I've learned that this is a bad way to treat someone, and I will never treat someone in the same way, in the same circumstance, if I'm the boss in that time. And I think this is one of the best ways to work out karma. When people, quote, do things to us, or when unfair things happen to us. So working out karma is mostly on the level of attitude, more than anything else. If we have the right attitude and work on developing the right attitudes, we will work out karma much, much, much more quickly. So some other ways of working out karma. One of them is to have courage. This is the other attitude that Swamiji often talked about. Master said that as long as you still have fear about a particular karma, you still haven't worked out that around a particular karma. And the way he phrased it was very interesting. And so I think it helps sometimes if you have fears come up in life. Oh, what if this happened in my life? There's countless of them. This world is just full of bad things that could happen to us. Being left destitute, disease, left abandoned, all these things. They're just this world is terrible. It's just an awful place when you look at all the awful things that happen in there. And it starts to create this fear of thinking, oh, what if you see something happen to someone? What if this happens to me? And so Swamiji sometimes counseled people to imagine the worst thing that could happen to me and embrace it and just accept it and put out the right kind of energy and attitude to overcome it. And if you do that, then that fear goes away. One of the beautiful stories in Autobiography of a Yogi is when Master asked Sri Yukteswarji to tell him some stories from his life. And one of them, he tells a story about his mother telling the young Priyanat Karar that to not go into this one closet because there was a ghost in that closet. And she was trying to make him afraid. Maybe for some reason she was trying to keep him out of that closet. I don't know what the whole story was. But of course Sri Yukteswar, being Sri Yukteswar already, even at a young age, he went running to that closet and opened the door just to see what was in there. And that courage drove away all fear. Maybe the reason was a ghost there, who knows? But that courage even drove that away. And so this is one of the ways to work out karma and overcome it, is to get rid of fear and have courage. And that also creates magnetism. Courage is one of the most magnetizing qualities that there is. Courage is a quality of the heart. When you hear of soldiers on the battlefield who have a lot of courage, it's often said they have a lot of heart. And the most courageous and strong of the Pandavas was Bhima, who also had a lot of heart and a lot of heart quality. He represented the heart chakra. And so developing that strength of the heart is one of the ways, again, creates magnetism, gives us the kind of energy and attitude to overcome karma. Another one is willpower and energy, like I've mentioned. Another one is prayer and devotion. Yoganandaji said this is why we pray to Divine Mother, because one of the reasons he preferred to pray to Divine Mother, because the Father is cosmic law. The Mother is beyond law. She can forgive the breaking of the law. I had this experience once where when I was much younger and got into a lot of trouble, found trouble, caused trouble, was arrested, appeared before the judge, and by the time I appeared before the judge, I had corrected my ways, and I did everything wrong, because what I had done, they could have sent me to jail for a really long time, and I did everything wrong. It was the hippie era. My hair was really long, and I didn't hire a lawyer or anything. I just went to the judge, but completely sincerely. There was no arrogance or anything like that. I was just completely open and sincere. And I said, "Sir, I've changed my life. I'm not doing these things anymore, and I really ask your forgiveness." And he could see my sincerity, and he gave me his forgiveness. He just basically gave me a slap on the wrist and let me go. And so this was a karma that I should have paid a lot more of a price for this karma. But because I prayed more to the Divine Mother aspect of that judge, I was forgiven. Now, if I had appeared a year later before that judge, same courtroom, same crime, and I said the same thing, "Oh, please forgive me, the judge would not have been so kind the second time." And so this is what Master said, that when we pray to God as Divine Mother, God doesn't have to exact the cosmic law, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and all, which is that's the Kali Yuga law. And Divine Mother is forgiving and can really mitigate and reduce our karma. The other one that is very interesting that Swamiji talks about is service to others. And he talked about it in his own life. He said that his greatest karmic test in this lifetime, caused by many past lifetimes, was spiritual doubt. And it was a big test in his early times with Yoganandaji. He said that even though he knew Yogananda was his guru, he said that he went through a period of severe testing where he just doubted everything that Master said. And the way he put it one time, he said, if Master had said that it's raining down in San Diego right now, Swamiji said, I would have just believed him, just because he said it. And this karma came from past lifetimes of doubting. It probably came from past lifetimes of causing others to doubt. And so Swamiji said the way he overcame this past karma is by serving others and encouraging others and helping others to overcome their own doubts. The way he put it is that you can expiate karma by helping others to resolve their doubts. You can concentrate on your own yearning for truth until the very yearning pulls you out of the dense fog of doubt into the sunlight of a faith, all the more certain because it has rejected gloomy speculation as a waste of time and energy. Helping others to resolve their doubts and uncertainties becomes a way of affirming one's own solution orientation. At last, supreme bliss becomes the only possible solution to every problem and difficulty in life. Swamiji also said that the way in that moment that he overcame doubt of Yogananda was through love. He said, I may doubt him, what he says, even though he's my guru, but one thing I do know is that I love him. And he was going through a period where he was feeling also rejected by Yogananda, not sure whether Yogananda loved him. And even there he said, he may or may not love me, but I know that I can give my love to him. And that's what got him out of this. Again, it was proactive, positive energy of sort of in a way, like I said, running towards that karma. The guru seemingly not loving him, and rather than turning away, running towards the guru, running towards the light is the way that he got through and got over that karma. Now the final way, the ultimate solution, and really the only final possible solution is moksha. Because as long as we're working out karma, improving our karma, getting good karma, we're still in the wheel of karma. And that's not the goal. The goal is to get beyond creating new karma altogether and beyond feeling the effects of past karma. And the only way to do that is to dissolve the ego. And when the ego is dissolved, the way that Swamiji would put it, he said the karma may still be there, It's like a horse with a rope, tying it to the post of ego. And he said, if there's no post of ego there anymore, that karma is still there, but it doesn't affect us anymore, because there's no one there to affect with that karma. So this is the ultimate solution. And it also is the ultimate solution to not creating new karma, because when we are free of ego and we act only for God without self-attachment or self-desire, then that karma doesn't accrue to us. So this is something that is really helpful to remember. As I said a couple weeks ago once, a friend of mine who, this idea of moksha, becoming a jivan mukta, just was too big. But even then, he finally decided, okay, I'm not a jivan mukta. But one year at the New Year's, he said, I'm going to make an affirmation this year. This year, everything that I do, when I have important things to do and behaviors, I'm going to ask myself, what would a jivan mukta do? And I'll do what a jivan mukta would do. And he sort of put on the robe of a jivan mukta. And he said it really, really helped him. And it made it seem more doable to be a jivan mukta, because he found that his actions were starting to go in that direction of being free inside, as a jivan mukta is. I'll close by reading something that Yoganandaji said. This is one of the most, I think, central truths that he gave us. Because if we follow just this one thing and understand this one thing and remember it, we can become free. And it's very simple. It gets out of this whole thing of, oh, I have too much karma, I just can't get beyond it, what am I going to do? And because, yes, life is full of karma, this world is full of it, group karma, there's also group karma. It's a very, very complex issue. But if we can simplify it the way Yoganandaji did here, we can get out much more quickly. There was a disciple who was asking and worrying about his karma. And Master said, your job for now is to get to God. Don't worry about all the karma you will still have to complete. Let God worry about that. First, destroy in yourself the source of karmic involvement. That source is your attachment to the ego. Once the ego is merged in him, then any actions you perform will no longer revert to yourself. Your actions will be like writing on water. They will leave no trace in the mind. In severing yourself from egoic involvement in any action that you perform, you will have cut the Gordian knot of delusion. This is the state of the jivan mukta, one who is free inside, even while living in this world. Being inwardly free, nothing he does can ever affect him again. And that's really the only way to get out of the cycle of karma. And it is possible. I quoted Yoganandaji last night at the Kriya initiation, where he once said, at a Kriya initiation, he said, those who receive Kriya Yoga and practice this should hope to become a jivan mukta in this lifetime through this practice. And he said, the way he put it, he also said many people in this room will be jivan muktas. So he implied that it was really possible for each of us. It wasn't just saying that, yeah, maybe if you're lucky and you have good karma. He didn't talk at all about good karma. He said if you do these practices, follow the guru, do all the other practices that are part of this whole comprehensive path of Kriya, you should hope to become jivan mukta in this lifetime. That's the only really final way out of karma, and that's what we should be spending much more of our time on, rather than worrying about individual karmas, short-term, long-term. That's the long-term plan, is jivan mukta. Short-term plan is, deal with it as it comes, work it out, not create new karma. But the long-term plan, and the only long-term one, is freedom inside. So may we find that freedom through grace of the Guru, through satsang, through everything that we do in this lifetime. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.